You're listening to the Piano Parent Podcast with Shelley Davis, episode 357. Hey there, and welcome to the Piano Parent Podcast. I'm Shelley Davis, a longtime piano teacher and parent with my husband of 4 mostly musical kids. As parents, we spend so much time trying to encourage and motivate our kids. We wonder if we're doing the best things for them. We second guess our decisions, and we worry if we're going to scar them for life. While you focus on encouraging your kids, I'm here to reassure and inspire you. I'll be here every week with practice tips, inspirational teacher interviews, and musical topics to help you impress your kids with your musical knowledge. Parenting is not for the faint of heart, but it's much easier with support, and you have come to the right place. Well, I am excited so much for piano parents to be listening to this episode in particular. Today, we're bringing back a teacher chat where I've brought 2 teachers online, and we're going to be chatting about a topic. And I've asked you guys to kind of help me figure out how to label this topic. But before we get into a title, let's have both of you introduce yourselves, and I'll just go in alphabetical order. So, Becki, do you mind introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll hear also from Clinton.
Well, thank you for having me, Shelley. I'm so excited. First, I'm excited to see you and talk to you because I haven't talked to you in forever.
It's been
It's been ages since I've talked to you. And the world has changed a lot since the last time that we have visited. We haven't seen each other in person in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, I think. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Miss Becki, and I am a piano teacher here in Lubbock, Texas. I have a fairly big school. I have students, teachers who work for me, and then we all work together to musically educate the people of Lubbock. It's a great job. I've been doing this for a long time, since 1993. And even then, my love has always been technology. So back in 93, back when computers were huge and they were desktops and they were cumbersome and difficult and software was expensive. Even then, I had a computer lab with keyboards and MIDI all set up for my students to use. So I've been doing a lot of that. I currently work for Simply Piano and formerly Joy Tunes with Piano Maestro, and just continue to use as much as possible technology to make learning fun and easy. So that's basically me in a nutshell. I also have ADHD, and I don't get a lot of sleep. I get a lot done, and I'm glad that I have ADHD so that I can get a lot done, because there's a lot to do when you've got, teachers and lots of students to manage. So
it's interesting that you mentioned about technology back in the 90s. I haven't thought about this in years. You sparked a memory for me. I am married to my husband, studied computer programming in college and still works in IT today. And for a time, we had a computer store where he built the different components. And anyway, but back in the day, there was a keyboard called the Miracle keyboard, and it connected to a piece of software on your computer where if you played the correct keys on the piano keyboard, you could shoot the ducks in the shooting gallery. You had that?
I loved the duck game. I actually tried to buy it.
Yes.
I hunted down the creators and asked if I can you split it off? Can I buy this from you? Right. And they were like, yeah, no.
Oh, no. What a missed opportunity.
I know. And the parachute where they would jump out and then they would go splat if you played the wrong chord.
Yes.
Absolutely. So one of our favorite games ever. We loved playing the duck game and the parachute jump out and splat all over the place. And it sounds terrible, but it was, it was a less gentle time.
Yes.
And when the kids splat, I would be like, dude, he's not going home to his family.
Don't
Thanks
do that
a
to
lot.
That guy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay, so we're gonna have to be careful, because if you and I, we need to not overpower the conversation, because I do want to hear from Clinton. Welcome
Clinton.
to the show, Clinton. Please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Hello, I'm Clinton Pratt. I teach piano in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's a multi-teacher studio that I own. It's called Piano Sensei. If you see me drinking my tea on the YouTube version, I've got
I'm
a
jealous.
shameless, plug for the Piano Sensei, the mug.
Looks
Anyway,
great.
and yeah, I teach about age 5 through retired adults, beginners through advanced. I'm also the president of our local Music Teachers Association, and that's wrapping up. So I'm starting a new position as president of our newly formed Greater Cincinnati Eurythmics Society.
Oh,
Which is all about
wonderful.
Dalcroze Eurythmics. So I love that. I'm a certified eurythmics teacher, and I use that in my teaching as well. Yeah, that's about it for now.
Awesome. And you brought up you came to Texas to our state conference. You've been a couple of times, and I have been able to sit in on your sessions where you talk more about eurythmics and just a couple of things that both of you have mentioned are making my brain pop. Oh, we should come back and talk more about that, and we should come back and talk more about that. So we'll have to make some notes and plan some future episodes. But today, the reason I invited both of you to come on the podcast today is to talk about a concept. And this is where I need your help to figure out how to define this concept. My brain goes to coping mechanisms, but I have been told that that's probably too serious of a topic or a title because we're not talking necessarily about mental health and really serious types of coping mechanisms. I'm thinking about piano students who may appear to be really strong in one area, or they may really, really want to focus on one thing in their lesson, but maybe a diversion tactic or some sort of avoidance strategy because they're trying to get away from doing something that they don't feel quite as strong about. Clinton, do you have, what did you say? Divert and direct? Deflect.
Oh,
Yes.
deflect.
Divert and deflect. And Clinton, you had come up with a clever title. What was that you had sent me?
Yeah, there were a couple different ones. The Artful Dodger, the unseen struggles of piano practice.
The Artful Dodger. And so maybe that's a more kid-friendly way of thinking about it. And I really don't have a good plan of how to get into the topic other than is this something that you see in your teaching? Clinton, let's start with you.
Yes.
Short answer, yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because sometimes we're maybe not as aware of it until it's brought up. Like when you asked me about it, then I started thinking about it and thinking about all the examples, right?
Yes.
Do you want to hear an example?
Actually, let me backstep for just a second. Okay. One thing to kind of get the conversation started, it makes me think of my daughter. And I mentioned this to her, and she said, "You're going to rat me out in front of everybody." It's like, well, we've learned from this, and it doesn't have anything to do with music. But when she was in third grade, she was supposed to have learned her multiplication facts. And, we all learned how to memorize the multiplication tables. I didn't know until she got into fifth grade where she was having to do long division and was really struggling. It took her forever to do her long division homework. And the reason was she had not memorized her multiplication facts. She was adding ever how many numbers. And then that took so long to do, and maybe she made a mistake in her addition. Then when she brought it over to the real problem, the real mathematical question, it was very frustrating, and she was making a lot of mistakes. It was only then that I realized you're working twice as hard as you have to be because you didn't memorize this other stuff. She had kind of figured out a different way to get the answer she needed then, but it didn't serve her in the long run later. So she was an Artful Dodger in math class. Mm-hmm. And then, Clinton, do you have, I would love to hear an example if you've got some ideas.
Yeah, so I'll change their names for anonymity.
Very good.
Ask their permission. But we'll say Andrew, he has a very good ear. In fact, he has perfect pitch and a very good memory. And in most of my lessons, I play a lot I demonstrate, we play at the same time, we go back and forth because we got two pianos. They're at one and I'm at one right beside them.
Yes.
So most of my lessons, even just like instead of saying practice that part starting at measure 12, I'll just say play this part and I'll play it, and then they know where I am and all this stuff. But with Andrew, he wants me to do that more and relies on that because he can just hear me play it, even if it's complicated. I mean, he's like early advanced, even if it's quite complicated, and just pick it up and memorize it, and right. And then he's got the score in front of him, but he can't really read it. So what I've done to sort of counteract that is I'll have him follow along with the score while I play. Even just a short excerpt. And then when he plays too, like, okay, play that part I just played, he can kind of just do it by ear and by memory, but I'll come over to the score and have him look like, here, this is what it is. So it's kind of like reverse learning sight reading because he didn't really get it earlier,
Yes.
So instead of just completely saying, no, you can't use your ear or memory at all, what's the first note? How does it go? Like, that's really tedious at this point to sort of go all the way back to square one.
Sure.
So we still do, the ear and the memory, everything that he's good at, but then, okay, read along, follow along, and his reading is getting better because of that.
I think that's a very smart strategy. And so for parents listening, if you notice these kinds of things in your kids, then these will be conversations you can start with your teachers, and you can try to help your child address whatever weakness they're kind of avoiding. Maybe in this case, it's not exactly a weakness. It's just that Andrew's ear is so strong. It's just easier. Let's just go to the ear. And as long as you know what the music sounds like, then that could serve you well. But if you ever want to play something that you've never heard before, then your hands are tied. You can't make any headway with that. So I think it's really smart that you're playing, letting him enjoy the listening of the music, but then also track along in a score, something that gives him the opportunity to isolate the tracking rather than everything that's going on when he's trying to play. So I think that's really good.
And I would say, just real quick, to parents who have a child like that, just encourage them to read at least a little bit of like a new section of their piece instead of just playing what they already know already,
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay, that, just remember, like, try a little bit of the next part, don't go to the extreme, like, here, now you have to learn this brand new piece just from sight reading only because your teacher said you weren't good at sight reading. Just a little bit.
Right. Celebrate their strength with their ear and certainly nurture that, but figure out some kind of way to build in the sight reading. One way that I do that too is at Christmas time, since we're coming out of Christmas last month, I have a full library of Christmas music. And of course, it's familiar tunes for a lot of them, but I often give them a book that's a level, maybe 2 levels below their current studying level. And I want you just play the whole book and play and sing along, and maybe compare one book to another and how this arrangement is different than that arrangement, even though it's a familiar tune. There are a lot of tricks, a lot of ways that your teacher can help your child develop sight reading without stopping or without causing them to feel bad about being so good with their ear. Becki, let's shift gears with you. Do you have another way that you see that students can be artful dodgers?
I have a student who will artfully dodge reading music, although he's quite good at it. He can read. He's very good at it because he gets distracted with the music theory. So for him, he can read it. He has hyper flexible joints. So playing is always a struggle for him. It's not that he can't read it. I can put something pretty complicated in front of him and he'll be able to play it, albeit slowly, because his fingers just don't quite work the way they need to work. And I mean, we're slowly working our way through that physically, but it's definitely a physical thing for him. It's not his brain works way faster than his fingers are capable of doing at this point. And he's very young. He's 6, but he's a music theory savant. I mean, I will have music on my stand and he'll just go over there and he'll just start analyzing it and telling me what the chords are. And I'm like, dude, it took me years to learn how to do that. And he just spits it right out. Like, yes. it just makes so much sense to him, but he's just not as capable of playing as he wants to be, because he hears the music in his head and I know he knows what it's supposed to sound like, and he just cannot get his fingers to cooperate. So it's really, really frustrating for him. And if you're a parent of a child like that, one of the strategies that I do with him is I have him put it into a notation score. So I'll give him the music, but I'll have him notate it in a score and have him orchestrate it. So he can actually, even without being able to physically do it himself, I'll have him orchestrate it so he can hear out loud what he's hearing in his head. Because I know he's hearing it in his head. I know the music is there. He just is having trouble getting it into his hands and out his body. So if you're a parent who has a child like that, but even if you're just a parent who has a regular child, give them the opportunity to orchestrate. Give them an app and let them orchestrate their music, because they may be hearing it very, very differently than just the one-dimensional piano version of it. They may be really hearing a very rich and full sound. And, sometimes I feel like piano music is very one-dimensional. And if you give your kids the opportunity really to explore that orchestra, the strings and winds and trumpets, it just opens a whole new facet of them wanting to play. So that when you brought this up, my first thought was that particular student, because I thought, yes, this is he will often divert and deflect actually playing the piece, because he wants to talk about the theory of it and he wants to tell me how he's hearing it, and not actually playing it.
So I have 2 follow-up questions for you. One, do you have, and I know that you are the queen of apps, so do you have 1 or 2 apps to recommend to parents if they have a young orchestrator, a young arranger?
I really don't. The good ones are out there: Sibelius, Notion, Noteflight, Muse, Score. They're all out there. You can play around with them. There's one, Google has one too, that is not, it's not necessarily a notation one, but it is something that they can play around with to orchestrate with different sounds and stuff. I will use whatever.
Sure.
Whatever works for that particular student.
And we have plenty to choose from these days.
Yeah, we really do. And this particular student really enjoys using Sibelius. So his parents have him on that at home. I don't usually use it here at the office, because usually what I do is just add it to his assignment and say, okay, I need you to go home and orchestrate this one. All right. You don't have to play it, but you have to orchestrate it for me.
So then, considering what he's trying to deflect from, his physical, not inability, it's just not able to catch up with where his brain wants to go. How are you helping him strengthen his physical fingers?
We do some physical, like therapy, like, moving your hands, and we really spend a lot of time with ladybugs. I know you've talked about ladybugs in previous podcasts, with hand shape, and really trying to help him keep that hand shape. He really has to physically think about doing that. And that ties up a little bit more brain power, I think, than he really wants to. He just wants to get it out. Yeah. And so sometimes what we'll do is I have a digital piano and I'll have him play through it slowly. And then we'll just layer over and over and over and over. Like he'll play, and then I'll add another track to it. We'll do it slowly, so that he can really hear what it's supposed to sound like as a whole. But it is a real challenge for both of us. Not just him, but for me. And I know his parents are very supportive. They're really very supportive. And so they understand if maybe we get through a lesson and we've only done like 2, maybe 3 measures, but we really dug deep and worked hard on those 2 or 3 measures.
And that's
and then other days, like today, he came in, he just left a few hours ago, and we got a whole bunch of music done, so
that's what I love about our job is we may have taught the same piece or the same curriculum for years, but every child that comes in is going to receive it differently or figure out a different way to process it or add to it or have their own challenges when they're working with it. This is good. If you don't mind, I'll throw in one. What about the student who says whenever you're trying to get them to keep a steady beat, and so you turn on either the metronome or some sort of maybe a drum beat app or like smooth metronome groove box or whatever that one is, and they say, "Oh, I know, that's throwing me off. I can't play with the metronome because that's throwing me off." And if you're a parent trying to have your child practice with a metronome and it's throwing them off, it's because it's shining a bright light on the fact that they are not keeping a steady beat and a steady pulse. And my strategy would be to do it a little bit slower, slow the tempo down and have them almost to where it's so slow that you can't mess up, although the music gets a little distorted that way sometimes. So I might play the section and ask them to count for me. Or we might isolate the rhythm of a measure or 2. In fact, that's something I've been doing lately is I got these things from the dollar section at Target. It's supposed to be some sort of little spinning wheel and it's got letters so that preschool kid could spell different words. But I painted over the letters and put different musical, quarter notes, quarter rest, half notes, whole notes. And so I'll tell them to dial up the rhythm in whatever measure that I notice they're missing. And when they take the time to physically, okay, that was a half note, okay, and then that's another half note. When they take the time to physically slow down and analyze what's in the measure, and we isolate that from the music and from all of the other noise, all the other information, then most of the time they play that rhythm and can count that rhythm correctly. And we do it separate from the music and then bring it back to the music, and it helps to, I don't know, I guess it just helps to solidify what that is. So
it's a better connection between, it's a multisensory learning experience. And I think that multisensory learning experience is really, really important for all ages to learn from, because the more senses you bring in, the more meaningful it becomes, the more memorable it remains. And it just becomes, an internalized, oh, now I know this. And it's something that I think about a lot, because when I think back about how I learned how to spell, and all of those rules, and I think to myself, how did you, because I'm thinking all the way back to like, I was 5 or 6 when we learned some of these rules, and they still stick with me. Those kinds of learning experiences, I think, are the ones that we as teachers need to really give our students, even if it takes a little bit longer. But that multisensory, what you're talking about, the dialing up and really getting them involved in matching what they see with what they're doing, with what they're hearing and playing, really makes it just a lot more meaningful.
I agree. Clinton, do you have recommendations for a child who has a metronome phobia?
Yeah, well, I would say, can they stay with the metronome or the beat with just something else, right? It doesn't have to be the piece that they're playing, because sometimes it's taking all of their attention to play the piece, right? They're thinking about which finger do I play on which note and which rhythm and all that. And then what's this beeping or like pounding beat? It's distracting, right? But like you said, well, no, it's distracting because you're not able to do it. So what would make it easier? Like you said, go slower or, simplify the whole thing. So play with the beat, but just like play any note on whole notes or something, right? So I'll play a drum track and here we go. We're going to play whole notes. You can play any note you want. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And make sure they can play every time it's number 1. And then, okay, play every time it's a number 1 or a 3, which is half notes. Play on every number, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc.
And you, I want to say from one of your demonstrations at a conference, you had racquetballs, and didn't you have them bouncing the ball on the 1 or bouncing it on the 1 and the 3?
Yes. Yeah. That's really good too, because you can feel like the time and the space and the energy too, right? And like the lead in, the anacrusis or whatever. So to hit the ball on the ground on beat 1, there's all this preparation, right? So you got to go 1 and then 2, 3, 4, you're passing it back and forth between your hands or something.
Yes.
And then if you change meters, see, that's a really fun game too, because if you change meters, then you have to adjust, okay, when am I hitting it on the ground? Or just 1, 2, 1, 2.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way I like you are more knowledgeable about this than I am, but getting your whole body involved and doing this activity, and then you can tailor it down to the fine motor skills later. But then a lot of students that will play a song that is written in 3/4 time, but they'll play it in 4/4. They'll just add an extra beat because that's what they're used to hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So give us another. Oh, go ahead, Becki.
I'm sorry. I have just one more. I had a student, bless his heart, counting was hard. It was just hard for him. And so we've been talking about metronomes. Very often I think parents are scared of metronomes because they had bad experiences with them when they were little, if they were little and they played, and their teacher, had them with the metronome like right in their ear, and it just like sets off a visceral reaction to a metronome. I personally love metronomes, so I think part of the half the battle really is the teacher's approach to metronomes and how we bring them into class and how we introduce them into class. So if you're a parent and you want to use the metronome at home, check with the teacher to make sure that what you're doing at home is reinforcing what they've been taught in class. And so when I bring the metronome up, my first words to them are, okay, so you know how I'm always asking you to count, right? And you don't really like that because it adds more brain power.
Right.
It makes you think more. There's a machine that will do all the counting for you. And I'm going to turn it on and we're going to go through this so that you can hear how the metronome is going to count for you. Okay. You don't have to do any more counting. You just let the little metronome do the ticky, ticky, ticky thing. And you just hold the keys for as long as the ticky, ticky thing needs to go to make it work. It takes a lot of the pressure off of them trying to stay within that beat because now it's a game. Now they're like, oh, the little machine's going to do the stuff for me. And we always start this very slowly. But this particular student just, oh my gosh, was not getting it. He was adding, how they do when they get to the bottom of the page. And then there's 5 or 6 extra beats as their eyes move up to the top of the second page.
Right.
And you're sitting there going,
time's ticking.
Come on. I'm waiting for you to play it. And so it was a very early technology. It's a very early Kickstarter thing. And I bought the very, very first Soundbrenner. I'm displaying it for you. The Soundbrenner Pulse. Okay. This is a wearable metronome and it does the haptic tapping on you. And I was so excited when I got it because I thought this kid really needs this. And so what I discovered was that kids have a hard time processing what they're hearing and the counting and the playing and they just have a hard time with all of that. It's just a lot of information for them to think about. And when I put this metronome on my student and said, okay, I want you to play this song. Okay, it's a song that he knows, but he's leaving all that time in there. And he played through it. first page, dead on accurate with the metronome that he's wearing, because now he can really feel it on his person. And then we got to the bottom and he felt himself missing all of that time as he went to the top of the next page. And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, I'm leaving over a whole note in there. And I was like, yes, you are. And now you know it. And it was a real eye-opening experience for him, but it was a real eye-opening experience for me too, because I was sitting there knowing what the problem was. And it didn't matter how many times I told him, you're leaving too much time between the bottom of this page and the top of this page, until he felt the passage of time with the metronome. It just did not sink in for him. And from that point on, he was very, very cognizant of how long does it take for me to get from the bottom of the page to the top of the page. I need to stay in time.
Right.
And so he doesn't use usually a metronome that he listens to. His parents went ahead and got him his own soundburner. And he uses that. And it has just made an enormous difference in his ability to play. So again, with the metronome, I think there's a lot of facets to playing with a metronome that need to be considered when you're a parent and you're a student and you're the teacher. How the teacher approaches it, what the point of using that metronome is, and what you're trying to accomplish with it from the teacher's perspective, and what the student actually hears you say, because what they hear you say may not be what you intended. Right. So you really have to, if you're a parent and you want to encourage your child to use the metronome, make sure you're on the same page with the teacher, so that you don't create an anxiety about introducing the metronome to your child at home, because you really want the metronome to function as it's intended. It's intended to be a machine to do the counting for you. That's what it's intended for.
It's a tool.
It's just a tool. It's not any different than a ruler or a watch or a pencil, but the approach has to be very considered.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so go ahead.
Well, I wanted to comment on that too, because I've had students who, they can't play with the metronome. And in my head, I'm thinking, don't you hear that you're not even on the beat at all? Like, you're just, what in the world are you doing? Right. But then I have to get my teaching perspective on and figure out, okay, what's going on? And like you said, sometimes it's a lot to hear it and process everything, right? They need to feel it. So I like that vibrating metronome idea. I've done just a more old school version of tapping on their back. Mm-hmm. So I get their permission first, but I'm most of my students are okay with me touching their shoulders or their arms or whatever. And I'm asking first, okay, now is it okay if I tap on your back? And so I'll tap a beat, they can feel it, or even just copying my rhythm, and then I realize, and you'll realize, a lot of students actually, they do have good rhythm. So being able to play with a metronome isn't really a good test of do you have good rhythm, right? Because I'll tap a rhythm on the back, doom, 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 doom. Play that on black keys, and they'll go do, 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 do. Okay, yeah, you've got the rhythm, right? And, or, play with my beat that I'm giving you, see if they can speed up and slow down and all that. Yes. And then I wanted to say with the metronome too, SpeakBeat is a metronome app that I really like. And it'll tick and beep, or you can put it on a voice and it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, cool. 1. And you can change the voice. It sounds British or whatever. And you can add subdivisions so it can go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And that one's fun. And I have students, like I was saying before, just play whole notes, first. So instead of that they're trying to play rhythms within beats, playing eighth notes and trying to subdivide that beat, it's the other way around. Let the thing go 1E and a 2E and a 3E, and okay, just play every one, so that they're hearing and sort of internalizing the beat before they're playing more complicated rhythms.
I think that's so good. So Soundbrenner is a physical product that is like a wristwatch. And so it straps onto their wrist, but then they can feel the sensation of the beat. And then Speak Beat is one of many different types of metronome apps that just gives a different way to approach. And I like what both of you have said. And I hope that it's so reassuring to piano parents that when a child is deflecting or kind of trying to go toward their strengths, maybe the path of least resistance, it's not because they're intentionally aiming to be defiant. I don't think any kid wakes up and says, I'm not going to listen to anything my piano teacher tells me. I'm not going to do anything my parents say. Usually, when you get pushback, it's because of a weakness that they're feeling within themselves. And it's up to us as their parents and as their teachers to figure out what's causing this and how can we take a different approach. Like we were talking about sight reading. And Clinton talked about the student that's strong with their ears, and Becki talked about the student that's weak with their fingers. Two completely different reasons why a child would not be so keen on sight reading. And then we did the same thing with metronomes. Lots of different reasons why a child might not be comfortable with the metronome. And I think we could talk about both of those all day, but let's see if we've got another artful dodge that students do. Clinton, do you have a different one?
Yeah, so my 11-year-old student, Chris, he wants to talk a lot. And, sometimes that's because they didn't practice and they don't want to get to the assignment, right? But with him, it's interesting because he does practice and he does well. So I think it's not that he's trying to avoid playing. Maybe he just likes talking to me. He likes the attention. He knows I'm going to listen and interact with them, but we have to get to the nitty gritty. So I have to just, bring it back to the piano, but, I'll listen to what he has to say, but then I'll just interrupt and say, okay, that's cool. I want to hear your D major scale.
Yes.
And so even though it's like I'm getting to the lesson, it's still because I want to listen to him, because I want to listen to him play, right?
Right.
So I say things like that, like, oh, I want to hear this, or, right, instead of, okay, stop talking, play your scale. I say it in a way that's like, I'm still involved in your life and I care about you. It's just, I don't care so much about, the toy that you bought with your friend at the store and blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
I want to hear your song that you are ready to play for me. I'm so excited,
We have such a unique relationship with these students, sometimes more so in one angle, more so than their parents. If there are multiple siblings in the house, how often does that kid get to have a one-on-one dedicated time with just them and their parent? And we have that every week. We have the opportunity to give them our undivided attention. I know whenever I was in high school, my last piano teacher, I told her a whole lot about my boyfriend and what we were dating and what he did. And he was so funny and he was so handsome. And years later, I reconnected with that piano teacher. And I was happy to tell her, you remember that boyfriend that I talked so much about in piano lessons? We've been married for 35 years. So I wasn't completely wasting your time, but thank you for being a kind ear to let me gush over him. Becki, do you have students that tend to talk a lot, and do you know kind of why it is?
I mean, I have a large contingent of kids with dyslexia and ADHD kids, and myself included, we have a tendency to just blurt and talk over each other and other people. And and this happens a lot, they'll play a couple of measures and say, hey, but do you know, like last week when I was doing the thing, and I'll be like, wait, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. And yes, I remember that conversation really, really well. And we'll finish it as soon as you finish the song. Okay.
Yes.
I need you to finish the song first. Now we have to start over because you interrupted my train of thought in your music. So I need you to start over without forgetting what you're going to tell me at the end. because I want to hear it, because we
Yes.
didn't finish that conversation before. I want to hear it. So the interrupting that happens in my studio tends to be from that. Not that they're deflecting because they don't want to play the song, just that they had this thought, and if they don't get it out
Right
at that
now.
moment, it's
It'll be
gone.
gone.
It is gone, for another month. And then we'll be doing something else. And they'll say, do you remember that conversation we had a long time ago?
Yes.
And I'll be like, yes, I remember the conversation we had a long time ago. So it always behooves me to corral the thought and make sure that I address it at the end so that it doesn't come back again later.
In 2 weeks, when in the middle of a third mission.
Yeah. So that's usually what happens in my classes. I generally speaking, that's why they're doing it. They're doing it because, and I know this from personal experience as well, if I don't actually start the sentence, the odds of me remembering it by the time you respond, it's gone.
Yes.
Then. So, I think that as teachers, we need to consider that part of their blurtiness. I'm sure there's a better way to say that, but the fact that they just need to get it out in that moment. That thought is really loud, and they're not really going to be able to concentrate on the rest of what they're supposed to be playing until that thought is out of their head.
Yes.
And so I feel like both as parents, because I have 2 kids, both as parents, but as educators, we really need to give them that kind of grace. Let it out. We'll come back to it, because this is not really the time or the place for it. We'll come back to it. But I think that sometimes the divert and deflect is it's just they're kids and they just need to get it
out. Do you have another deflection tactic from students, Becki?
You mentioned it, and then you kind of turned away
glossed
from
over it. Oh, okay. What did
Yeah.
I deflect from?
The child who didn't practice, because by the time they looked at their music after their last lesson, they completely forgot everything you guys talked about. And they're sitting there with, the deer in the headlights look on their face of, oh no, I'm going to be in so much trouble because I didn't practice and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing here. And so when this happens to my students, and it took me a long time to learn how to give them the grace that they need. I always explain to my students now, not so much when I was a newer teacher, but now, life happens. It's okay. They're already stressed out because you're an adult that they love and they want to please. And they've clearly disappointed you because they know you expect them to practice. And they didn't do it. And never mind their parents, because they're terrified that you, the teacher, are going to go tattle to their parents and say, do you know they didn't practice? They didn't practice. We didn't get anything done today because we had to review what we did last week because they didn't practice.
Right.
They're scared that that's what you're going to go and say to their parents. So that kind of deflection, I think, happens a lot because life happens.
Right.
So we have to do this again because I need for you to remember it. And that when that happens, and when I have a student who does that, Andrew and Trevor Dow, who are the creators of Wonder Keys and Teach Piano Today. So the website is teachpianotoday.com. So if you're a piano teacher and you're listening to this, may I just suggest that, and I got these years ago. In fact, I went to the website to see if I could find them again. And there's 39 pages of things for teachers to print. And I just gave up. I was like, I have no idea where these are. They're there somewhere. I know they are. But I have these really cool stickers that Andrea set up for teachers to use. They're really easy to slap on a page and give the kids the opportunity to write in their own notes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big fan of them doing that, even at age 5. I want them to take ownership of their learning, and I want them to write stuff down that they can use to trigger whatever it is that they need to trigger. And so one of them, you can see I use these a lot. This one says accidentals, patterns and sequences, expression, primary chords. It has all kinds of different areas of focus. So I'll use these with maybe the older kids because
I'm just going to clarify, those are printed on like the Avery 30
yes.
Mailing labels on a sheet.
Yeah, these are just mailing labels from Avery. Yeah.
Yes.
So I love this one for the older kids. And then again, this one too, if you've got, I'm showing this one, it says primary chords and what key it's in, and it shows a staff. These are really helpful for students who are either working on music theory or really need to memorize something, and they're trying to focus the piece in their heads. I love, love, love this one. This is just a keyboard.
Yes.
Just a keyboard. And you slap it on the page and you can tell them, okay, so your left hand is going to start here and your right hand is going to start here. And you can have them color in the keys so that they can remember where to start without going to the page and saying to themselves, I have no idea what we're doing. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to play the song I played 3 weeks ago so that my mom hears me practicing because I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. So I really love these stickers because they're super fast and super easy to just like slap on the page and have them write something in. It makes it really, really easy. I have some that are not colored in, so it's just the keyboard.
Yes.
Because some of my students really need like color coding.
Yes.
And so this gives us an opportunity to do that. I love this one too. First, it reminds me of, where has my little dog gone? It reminds me of that song. But this one says, where do my hands go?
With a picture of the hands.
Of
and
the two hands. Yes. And so very often with little kids, I'll write in the letters of where their hands are supposed to go for that page. So this is really, really helpful. Accidentally ran out of black ink and printed this. And it's just the hands.
Just only the hands without the words. Yes.
Yeah, it's just only the hands. This is also really, really helpful, especially like when we're doing things like scales. I can use this to write in scale fingerings.
Yes.
With these versus where do my hands go? So these are really, really helpful. And if you're a teacher and you're listening to this, I just say go mine the Teach Piano Today teacher printables for all of the things. There's so many resources there for you to use. And it really, Andrea and Trevor, both piano teachers, these are things that you will use all the time. They're really just a huge part of me giving my students as many tools as possible for them to be self-sufficient at home. Yes. And for them to remember what it is that we talked about in class when they see it, to engage, because often they don't practice as soon as they get home. They just don't. And maybe a few days, they have forgotten a lot. So as many tools as I can provide to make sure that when they see it, they remember the 30 minutes that we had together and what we were trying to accomplish.
Awesome. And I will link up, you sent me several of the files that you had already downloaded. I'll have those available on the show notes for this page, plus a link to teachpianotoday.com. And that can be found at pianoparentpodcast.com/357. This is episode 357. And Clinton, I'm going to let you have the last word. Do you want to expound on how you help students know how to get started or what to practice when they get home? Or do you have another artful dodge that we can talk about for a couple of minutes?
Yeah, in my studio, it's funny because if they say, oh, I forgot what to practice, I'll say, nope, can't use that excuse because we use a studio management system. So I type all their assignments and instructions, and they have it in their app or computer, and their parents have it and everything. It's all right there. So
Come up with a different excuse.
they don't, yeah. In fact, I tell them, like, you don't have to remember what to do.
Right.
That's great. Just like, if I sent you to the store and said, hey, will you get eggs and butter and cheese, but don't get that weird cheese, get the one with this and and you're not going to remember. That's why you write a list.
Yes.
So I'm writing the list. All you have to do is look at it. So don't say you forgot to practice, or don't say you forgot what to practice. Just say whatever it is. Be honest. I didn't look at my assignment or whatever it is. But I also make it a point to, I kind of let them know that this is a weird one because you might think this is bizarre, but that I don't really care if they practiced or not. Now,
you said that so quietly.
Yeah. Like, yes, I really do. Of course,
Sure.
I want them to practice, but like, I don't want them to feel guilty. And so I don't want to hear a whole sob story when they come in. Like, I don't care. Like, so if I can tell that they're trying to deflect, like, hey, how are you? Oh, well, I had a busy week. I did that. Like, I can tell they're going on and on because they're going to tell me all these things that are busy, and that's why they didn't practice. I don't really care. I mean, like, let's just help you get better. Okay. So,
Yes.
So if you practice 10 hours a day, we would still work on stuff and make improvements. If you practice 0, we're going to work on stuff and make improvements. So don't feel guilty. We just take you where you are and we'll work on it.
And move forward.
That is beautiful. That you just lit a light bulb in my head. If you practice 10 hours a day, we're still going to find stuff to work on. So let's just own where we are and figure out where we're going from here. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And everybody always feels like they should have practiced more,
Yeah.
Even the ones that practiced a lot, even me, I practice. You're like, oh, I should have practiced more. Like, but we don't want the guilt of that. Let's just take where we are and we'll just go from there.
Awesome.
I think that is definitely an episode of, excuse me,
bless you,
and of another podcast is the different facets of guilt in a piano lesson, from parents, from students, from teachers, how we all kind of react to different types of guilt, and how that affects our students. I know they feel guilty when they come in that they didn't practice and they've disappointed me.
Yes.
I have a lot to worry about. You not practicing is not something that's gonna change the way my day goes. It's not. Right. And I'm not mad at you because you didn't practice. Yes. I'm not mad at you for that at all. Yes. Did you read the assignment sheet I sent your parents with the pictures and the video included? No, but you could have. We're just gonna fix what we can and move on. Yes. And I think what Clint said was exactly right.
I tell my kids, especially just during different phases. I've got a high school senior right now who got the lead. Well, not the lead, I don't guess, but she's going to play Mrs. Potts in her school musical of Beauty and the Beast. So guess what's going to consume her life for the next several weeks? Piano is going to be, it's just not going to happen because she can't with homework and senior classes and all of that. And so I told her, first of all, I will never be mad at you. When you come to the piano, we're not mad at each other at all.
Ever.
We'll do whatever we can. Second of all, I want piano to be a soft place for you to land. Yes. When you come in here, this is a stress-free zone. And if this is the only playing you get to do in the week, well, I'm glad you've got it. And I'll cheer you on. Let me know when the tickets go on sale for your play, and then we'll make some music while you're here, and then I'll cheer you on for the other things, the other wonderful things you have going on in your life. And speaking of wonderful, we are at the hour, and this has been a great conversation. I feel like we could keep going round robin and have other ways that we have seen students try to mask something that they don't feel quite so confident about, and that's really revealing a strength and how we can help them overcome them. But I think you both have given us some really great things for parents to look out for and some tactics that teachers can use to help them overcome that. Before we sign off and say goodbye, can we do one last round robin? And Becki, I'll start with you and then we'll close with Clinton, just to tell us how people can connect with you if you're online or if you've got things coming up that you would like to share with listeners that they can get involved in. Tell us how we can follow up with you.
That is a setup question if ever I've heard one from you, Shelley, ever.
You're welcome.
So you can always reach out to me at missbecki.com, www.missbecki.com, or you can email me at missbecki, MSBECKI at gmail.com. I'm all over the interwebs and Facebooks, and I'm everywhere all the time. So you can always reach out and connect with me that way. And I have two really big projects going on. One, I really can't talk about a whole lot.
Oh, top secret.
It's a secret
okay.
project, but it's really, really exciting. And I'm really hoping that it will make a huge impact on kids and parents, not just piano kids and parents, but kids and parents, all kids and parents. Right. So that one I can't really talk about, but the other one is
you'll have to come back when you can talk about it.
Right. Okay. Yes, I will definitely do that. But the other one that Shelley and I were kind of giggling about earlier is I am planning our summer music camps here in Lubbock. And for years I did a summer music camp that was not themed. It was just music was the theme. But last year I did a Disney camp for summer music camp, and I did a dinosaur camp. And I went to see the movie Wonka. And if you're a parent and you've not taken your children to see Wonka, what even are you doing? Okay. Go see Wonka. It's a musical. The music is amazing. The movie is not scary like the original one was. It's very sweet. It's very innocent. And it will, as an adult, it really connects with the childhood that you no longer get to access. It's a beautiful, beautiful story. And I want everybody to see it. So I was kind of thinking about, maybe doing a Willy Wonka based music camp. And my daughter was like, Mom, nobody else is hyper focused about this like you and I are. Okay. So maybe not. And I was like, okay, yeah. And I dropped her off at school, and then I went about my day and I started teaching. And then the entire camp just exploded in my brain. All the games that we could play and the decorations and how to tie it all into Willy Wonka and the story and the music. And so that is my current hyper focus right now, is preparing for summer music camp, which I know is in June, but a lot of this, since it's a brand new concept for us, a lot of this is just going to require an enormous amount of building game pieces and set pieces. Sure. And, so that is what I'm working on. And I messaged Shelley and asked her, hey, what do you think about these names? And so she sent me back her votes on the names of the camp. So that is what I'm actually working on right now. But if you have any questions or you want to talk to me about anything, missbecki@gmail.com.
Awesome. Makes me wish I were going to be in Lubbock in June.
It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much fun.
Clinton, tell us how we can connect with you, and tell us anything. I know that you have your own podcast. Tell us about that and how we can listen to you.
Yeah. So my podcast is called The Piano Sensei Way. So you can find that at thepianosenseibway.com. It's also on YouTube. I think I'm about to release episode 13, so it's still very new, but yeah, and it's for piano teachers. So piano teachers listening, you can go there, but it might be helpful for piano parents too. Just look at some of the episodes and see what might interest you. Also, let's see if any teachers are listening. I'm hosting the Creative Teaching Conference. Again, that's in Cincinnati, July 7, 8, and 9. creativeteachingconference.com, and that's really fun. It's all kinds of creative things like improv and composition and playing by chords and Dalcroze Eurythmics, and it's small and it's very intimate, and we all get to have meals together and jam together. It's really fun.
I'm jealous of that. I want to go. This will be the second time you all have had that, right?
Yes.
My anniversary is July 9th. And
Oh.
I originally told my husband, we're spending our anniversary in Cincinnati. And he was on board with it, but he's been sick. And so I don't know that we'll be able to do any traveling this summer. But one of these days I'm going to get up there, and I feel a sense of pride because it's run, correct me if I'm wrong, it's run by you and Tony Parlapiano and Chris Oil,
Yes.
correct? Which to me, that's also CTC,
Yes.
Creative Teaching. But all three of you have been on my podcast before. So I just think it's kind of cool. It would be neat to run into friends, meet friends face to face that I've spoken to online. So,
Yeah.
and you said your podcast is at Piano Sensei Way, and that's how we can connect with you.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for your wonderful insight. I am grateful that you are skilled and experienced enough to recognize these different dodging tactics that students might use. But then you also have grace and experience to help the students work through that. And I'm glad that parents got to learn from you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley.
And that's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging around all the way to the end. If you haven't done so already, this would be a great time for you to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever your favorite podcast player is, hit subscribe so you will be the first to receive next week's episode. I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Piano Parent Podcast, and you could just email me, Shelley at pianoparentpodcast.com.